Hello, hello. Today's live stream is entitled Inoculation versus Indoctrination, Teaching Woke Ideas in Your Homeschool. If you are watching this live, feel free to make comments and I can address them here. And if you are watching it on the replay, um, welcome. Glad you're able to see this. So, today, I want to talk to you about how to go about addressing woke ideas, woke topics in your homeschool with your homeschooled students. And you might be wondering, why would I do that? Like, why? The whole point of my homeschooling was to get away from woke ideas. Why would I even want to bring it up? The simple answer to that is that your kids do not live in an isolated little box in your home. They're going to have to leave your home at some point. They already do, whether it's just to go to the movies, perhaps without you, or maybe to visit a friend or go to a birthday party with a friend or engage in an extracurricular that does not involve just homeschooled kids or involves homeschool kids who don't homeschool the same way you're doing it. The point is they live in the world. And you have a golden opportunity, the younger they are, to do more to inoculate them against the bad ideas of woke ideology than you'll ever have. If you're homeschooling kids who are a little bit older, you still have access to them and opportunity because they're homeschooling to inoculate them against, you know, worse uh, internalization of woke ideas they may have already been exposed to. And you are going to need to do that even more urgently because they are differentiating from you. They're pulling away from you with their friends, with um, their goals, et cetera, at a rapid clip when they are, let's say middle school and beyond. That's developmentally appropriate for them to want to define who they are separate and apart from you. So it's going to be very important for you to find ways to inoculate them against the worst appeals that will be made to them. So as I tend to do in these shows, I will try to go by age group and see if that helps you figure out, what to do. Because of course you don't want them falling prey to the indoctrination tactics of woke purveyors of ideas. And you want to, you want to give them something to come back with, at least in their own minds. Right. So it's not enough to just like shield them. You need them to be able to work through it on their own at whatever age they're at. So here we go. Kids who are, let's say, elementary school age are likely going to run into people who have been affected by the gender woo, the gender cult soonest before the other things. And I say that because the whole idea that kids have to use these preferred pronouns and the gender unicorn and all this kind of stuff is being taught to kindergartners and even preschoolers around the country. And that means it's turning up in kids' cartoons and in movies, and also, the trans characters, um, some of whom represent children, are popping up sometimes when you least expect it. Different depictions of relationships that are outside the norm than you would like your child to see without explanation or popping up in their field of vision, when and where you least expected in movies, animated movies, things like that. So, what should you do? Well, I would say you get a little old fashioned and have conversations. We've been taking modern parents have been taking a lot of things for granted that our parents and grandparents did not take for granted. They felt it was necessary to teach children about modesty, body parts, not like using necessarily all kinds of explicit sexual terms, but you're a girl, you're a boy, whatever, reinforcing reality, what they observe with reality. What is this? What does it do? Why is that? Why does he like that? Why do they wear their hair this way? What's going on? And what woke parents do is say, well, it's up to them and it's whatever, blah, blah. You need to reinforce what is overtly. Don't just assume that if they don't come to you with some wackadoodle notion of I can be a boy if I'm a girl, that all is well. make sure they understand that there's a difference between boys and girls. You don't need to go into the deep, gametes and everything at this age, but, make sure they understand that they're different. Reinforce there are lots of different ways to be a girl, lots of different ways to be a boy. That's totally fine, but you're still ultimately a boy or a girl. And if your child at a young age does decide they want to play with toys that traditionally would have been like a girl toy, but like dolls versus trucks, I would reinforce, the notion that girls like trucks and boys like dolls sometimes. And you can even remember with Free to Be You and Me, there was the story about William, and I think it was William and his doll. He wanted a doll. His parents didn't want to give it to him, and then they gave him a doll. And they talked explicitly about how fathers, yes, dads, will probably need to take care of children or babies someday. And so, why not have a little boy play with a doll to see what it's like to be a dad? So, it's you have to go maybe 20 years back to where we were at the normal rational level of questioning gender norms, because obviously the gender woo is completely gender stereotypical, which is odd considering they think there's like unlimited numbers of genders, and yet somehow the correction is always binary. If you were born a boy, you're going to be surgically or chemically corrected to be the other way, not some third, fourth, fifth, 10th, 12th thing. So, although there are people changing their ears and their noses and whatever to be like animals, and I know that's completely insane, but the odds are that your child is going to be encountering kids who think they can be the opposite sex along that binary continuum. So, you need to reinforce that there are, women truck drivers and fathers who diaper babies. So, when you do that, if they run across a kid who says, "No, so and so, I'm a boy because I like to play with trucks," you can say, "Well, I'm a girl and I like to play with trucks." I mean, they to them, it will be completely normal what they're doing, and what the other person's saying won't sink in. It won't have any merit, but they won't know why. Of course, they're little kids. They get a little bit older, on towards 10, and they're able to actually have a conversation like, yeah, I don't need to be a boy to drive a truck." End of conversation. So it's like an inoculation against the stereotype that tells them you must be this if you're that, if you like that, or you want to do this. Um, so that's one of the things you can do in elementary school. Another thing you can do is you can, in your exploration of science and biology, you can talk about the reproduction strategies of different living things, which most people do start doing in elementary school, usually with plants and animals. And again, you don't need to get into sex per se, but you can get into that there are really only about 3 reproductive strategies that living things employ. And you've got your, opposite sex gametes. You've got your, like self-cloning kind of idea of certain animals. They can just kind of reproduce by splitting themselves apart. And then you've got those that can um, be both in one creature. But what is interesting is that you as a teacher in your homeschool can explain without going into sexual detail, just by talking about the strategy and the cells, you can explain that the human method is the opposite sex gametes, and that is just how it is. There's no other way to do it. Mhm. And if they ever come to you, for example, let's say, later on in elementary schools, well, I just heard that so and so was born in a, was made in a test tube, or, like they get confused. But how that you can just say that's correct. We had this, one gamete and the other gamete, and they came together. Even, it wasn't inside a body, but it was still a male one and a female one, produced by a male and produced by a female. So every chance you get to affirm, I hate to use the word affirm, but like drive the scientific point home of the sexual binary, you are inoculating them against something that will come up. Now, you might be asking at this age, should I tackle it head on? Should I explicitly say anyone who tells you a man can be a woman or a woman can be a man is wrong? And to that, my answer is yes. If they come to you with that question. But the good thing about preparing them with fact based lessons about science and gametes and, people are born boys or they're born girls or males or they're females, etc. And they know this because, parents know this or doctors know this because they can look at them and observe with their eyes. You can teach them scientific method. We know what a thing is because we observe it, and that's how we know. And, this is what, when you can even show them on plants, this is the male part, this is the female part, stamens and all this other stuff. So if you've done that, the subsequent conversation about, "No, that's not possible. Remember we talked about it?" "Yep, so that's not possible." They're confused. You don't need to say they're bad people, they're wrong, they're a cult, not yet. Not at this age. But you can simply state with authority, calm authority, that's incorrect. They're misinformed. They're confused. Some people say that, but they're incorrect. And if your child pushes it, like, "But why would they say that if it were incorrect?" You can say, "Well, there are people, they're wrong, but there are people who think the earth is flat. They're wrong too. There are lots of them, but they're wrong." You can talk to them about other times in the past when human beings have thought things like that the sun revolved around the earth, for example, and we were wrong. And you can even explain that they wanted to believe that really badly because it made sense to them because of their religion, but scientifically it wasn't true. So you can give other examples of where humans have been fallible. Humans have believed things that were not true, usually because they weren't looking at something scientifically. They were looking at something ideologically, but to a small child, you can say they were looking at something based on their feelings and what they wanted to be true because of something else that they believed that made them feel good, but it really wasn't true. Wasn't true. And if you can think of other examples where human beings have believed in things that weren't necessarily true because they wanted to so badly and, reality was not on their side. So connecting the dots that there is such a thing as reality, that we can know it, that we know it using our five senses, that, giving them examples from their own, rudimentary study of biology at elementary school level of how systems, living things reproduce, and that is what sex is about. Sex meaning gender. Okay. That it's a strategy for reproduction of the species. Mhm. And then explicitly separating that from the concept of how one feels inside. So, in other words, rather than blending it and say how you feel inside is what you are, you can have conversations separate and apart from science, of course, about how do we know who we are? And there's different ways, right? There's, I know who I am physically because I observe the body parts that I have, right? I observe that I'm female and I am not male. I don't have male body parts. So therefore, I am female. But you can talk about all the different ways there are to walk around the earth being female, like you are a female, but there's all different ways to do it. You can find pictures from magazines of different kinds of, athletes or, like I said, female truck drivers, whatever, and show them and then just say, see, this is, women, girls be looking all kinds of different ways, but they're all girls. How they look doesn't change what's going on. Now, how do we decide what clothes we like? And you can talk to your child and they can say, "Well, I feel more comfortable in pants than skirts. I don't like skirts." Or, I really like dressing up and I like skirts." Okay. Well, this person doesn't. They're whatever they are, or whatever they like, and just say, "And that's great. That's awesome. Isn't it great that you can do that?" And there are other people who prefer the opposite of you or something slightly different than you. Does that make them not a girl anymore? Does that make you like Supergirl? And your kid is gonna go, "No." Right? Because you've already taught them that it doesn't change who they fundamentally are. It just changes what they like. It's just what they like. And so you can have these kinds of conversations and you should. And you should. You should take time to do it. You should make observations when they choose their clothes. When they're picking things out or saying, "I like this," or they have a favorite pair of fill in the blank. Why do you like those? Tell me what you like about them. Just kind of get to know what their tastes are and listen to what they say. So if they say, "Well, it's because it's comfortable," or "Because I love the color red," or "Because, I feel pretty," or whatever their reasons are, that gives you tons of information about how they are expressing who they are. So you can always reference that. "Well, we know that you're a girl, but you like X," or "And you like X." and so forth and so on. See, that's just because you like it. That's nothing to do with you being a girl. And again, point to yourself or a sibling who likes something different. Say, that's just what they like. It's just their opinions and their tastes. Could be true with food, could be with clothes, could be books they like to read, activities they like to engage in. It doesn't matter. Get to know what it is they personally like about it. And not only does it help inoculate them against the notion that there are, gender specific likes and dislikes in this world that have to go along with, gender, what sex you are, but also you're going to be teaching them subtly about identity. You're going to be teaching them that identity is what we choose for ourselves, all the choices and the values that we hold dear and so on. Why do you like it? Why does it matter to you? Why do like tell me about this? And as long as you go to your child with genuine curiosity and you're open to whatever they have to say without judgment, the other thing that you're doing is you are opening the door for them to come to you in the future about changes to their tastes and their likes and their dislikes, along with the reasons for them. And they're going to trust you that no matter what that is, you're not going to judge. The earlier you do this, the better. Because then when they get into a rebellious mode, that someone else on the outside isn't going to be able to convince them that if they make a certain choice, mom and dad, are going to be mad and they shouldn't tell mom and dad, which does, by the way, still happen even with homeschool kids. Doctors will get them alone in a room, people on the internet that they converse with, even through a homeschool class or activity, or, you're not going to be able to keep them from communicating with their friends forever. At some point, they're going to communicate with their friends behind your back earlier than you think. So you need to prepare them so they can say, that's not my mom. I can tell her anything. It's not my dad. I can tell them anything. They don't judge. They just listen. And you just have to train yourself to do that and let them go ahead and have those experiments. Now, having said that, it is super important not to preempt any of this. So if you have a boy and you think it would be really great for him to be more sensitive because he's really, what, you don't hand him a doll. You don't hand your little girl a truck and try to like foist this on them. They're going to pick up on this is what you want from them and they'll try to please you. So be very careful. This is 100% you are the open recipient of what their natural proclivities and inclinations are while teaching them the facts of reality in the world of the sex binary. Okay? So that just have to be, I know somebody right now who's just getting all influenced by mommy boards and thinking like the way I can, make my child a very well-rounded person is to like, hand them a doll and hand, and there's now a little boy walking around with his very own Barbie and a purse. School's not doing that to him. Mom's doing it to him. So yeah. Anyway, moving on to middle school. So now we're getting into when the kids are like, push me, pull you game. You don't know, mom, blah, 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 blah. And I mean, the best best laid plans are going to result in some rebelliousness. So you just need to remind and I'm going to go back to like age 11 here. Okay. Your 11 to let's say 14-year-old that you are not in the judgment business unless they're doing something that is absolutely wrong, like illegal, immoral, and hopefully you've had conversations along the way about what good and bad is in your house and what you think is right and wrong and so on. But that when it comes to what clothes they want to wear, whether they wear makeup or don't wear makeup, whether they comb their hair or don't comb their hair, etc., that your only concern is for their health and safety, that they abide by the law and don't get in trouble with the law, that they come to you and are open and talk to you when they're feeling anything that, makes them upset, sad, angry, frustrated, whatever, that you are a port in the storm. But beyond that, you got to be careful. They may want to cut all their hair off. They may want to grow it down to their butt. They may want to, wear false eyelashes. They may want to never put any makeup on their face at all. Who knows? Now, cleanliness is very important. So if they start, slacking off on their personal hygiene, you're going to want to intercede because you can explain about that being just for their overall health and well-being. But if your girl suddenly wants to just have short hair, I wouldn't freak out. Just ask her about it. Just be like, that's interesting. You've always had long hair. What's changed? Oh, no, I'm just curious. I mean, it's your hair and it does grow back, but I would love to know more about your decision and see if they'll tell you. And try to, make it okay for them to say that you can, of course, I'm not going to stop you from cutting your hair. Now you can draw the line. And again, you said there will be no tattoos and piercings because you're too young to consent to a permanent change. So that you can say. And you can explain it at this age that way. You can say, I fully respect that it is your body. And when you're an adult and I'm no longer responsible for you, then it's not going to be up to me. Not much I'll be able to do. But for now, it is my responsibility. And you may think this is what you really, really want, but because it's permanent, it's my job to kind of hold you back from that. By the way, it's also not legal to do the tattooing anyway in most places. And as far as the piercings go, let's take it on a case by case basis. Now you may decide, as I've done for my high school kids, that I'm allowing piercings. They even convinced me to get one. So um, that bothers me less, but no tattoos. No tattoos. That's a you got to be a full blown adult and out of my house, and then it's none of my business. But that was my personal choice. Yours might be no to both. And that's also legitimate. But you need to be able to have conversation. The older they get, the more you can approach them with dialogue and reason. And the more you can say, all right, I'd love to know your reasons. I'm just curious. No judgment, just curious. And if you hear anything that gives you pause, like, well, all my friends are doing it, et cetera, then you can say, oh, okay, that's interesting. Why is that important? I mean, I'm just curious why that's important to you. I'd really love to understand. So as long as you are approaching them with genuine curiosity as opposed to what my parents would say, which is like, oh, and if they told you to jump off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge? That's a quick way to shut your kid down and to make you less trustworthy and their friends more trustworthy. Yeah, my friend said you'd say that. But if you surprise them, which is like, oh, they are? That's interesting. How many are doing this? This is when I was your age, it wasn't a common thing. So I'm just curious, like, when did this change and why do you think that is? And some they might be like, I don't want to talk about it, mom. And it's like, okay, well, here's the thing though. In order for me to give you permission, I do need to understand it. So it's not that you're like extorting an answer out of them. You're just saying, like you have your needs and I have mine. And as your parent trying to protect you, it's really important for me to understand your reasons to make sure they're really your reasons. And if they're like, well, what does that matter? Then you can have a conversation about protecting boundaries and say, well, look, things that you want to do that are just come out of you and aren't influenced by other people, that's a completely different thing than if you feel like something bad might happen if you don't do it, or that your friends won't like you anymore, or that you have to do this in order to fit in and it might not actually be what you want. I care about you, right? I don't have any ill will against your friends. It's my job to protect you. And sometimes it's hard to know whether our decisions are really ours or somebody else's. And I would encourage you to have these kinds of conversations on a lower level earlier, meaning that, you would start even with young kids about, defining what is mine and what belongs to someone else and how we make decisions. You can have these conversations pretty young, pretty young. It's like, that's why I said, you ask them why they like things, why something matters to them, how they make decisions, and always reinforce autonomy, always reinforce individuality that is truly individual, right? That's not just, trendy or like weird, but is, then they're going to see that it's okay to just be me and it's okay, and you can even model it. So if you've had an experience where somebody wanted you to do something that you didn't want to do, it could be something simple, like decorate the house for the holidays or whatever. And you could have a conversation, I know a lot of people are decorating their houses for the holidays, but I think we're not going to do it because it costs a lot of money and we just want to decorate inside where we can see it. So we're going to make our holiday pretty, but we're going to let the neighbors, take care of their own stuff and that's fine for them and that's great, but we're going to do something a little differently. You can think out loud about a variety of things. Even if there's a dietary change that you've made in your home, you can talk about why you did it and how it's different from other people, but you're okay with that. And, different people do different things. And, they want to eat one way, we're eating this way because reasons. And you explain it. And you can even say, some people think it's strange what we're doing, but that's okay. They can do what they're doing. And I don't judge that. So you teach them about this kind of live and let live mutual respect. And it doesn't mean you approve of all the choices other people are making either. But I don't think it serves any purpose unless you think what they're doing is truly wrong to reflect that judgment, right? I don't show judgment of others to my children unless I definitely want them to make the same judgment. If I see someone being abusive, I see someone being violent, I see somebody doing something rude or nasty or offensive, like truly objectively nasty, like hitting somebody for no reason or whatever, I'll say, well, that's rude. Or yelling at a recent example was somebody yelling at a server in a restaurant in a just nasty way for no reason. It was completely uncalled for. And the server looked like really upset and getting emotional because this guy was being just abusive, a complete jerk. And I felt free to say to my daughter, I said, that is completely uncalled for. And I feel bad for her. He could have gone about that so many different ways. And we had a conversation about it. She agreed. She's like, yeah. And I said, what do you think he should have done? And then she says, well, he should have, da, da, da. Yeah, I agree. He should have done this. So we have these little conversations. Now she's 15, but we've been having these conversations since, forever. So you strengthen their notion of boundaries, of choice, real choice, individual choice, not this fake conformity masquerading as choice of like, I'm going to choose to be a boy or I'm going to choose to be a girl, right? So you get into the preteen years and it becomes essential. You can also have deeper conversations about health and well-being and taking care of their girl or boy parts. You can get more into your very own biology/sex ed, which is going to be more like health ed, not literal sex, but just taking care of yourself because you want to keep your body clean and healthy so you can grow up strong, etc. And if you want to have children someday, and obviously we would never put the pressure on our kids to have children, you better have kids. But it's more like, and if you decide you want to be a mom or a dad, it's going to be very important for you to be healthy and strong and fit and so on and so forth, because in addition to needing a lot of energy and strength and health for, the project of raising kids, it takes a lot of energy. You want your body to be healthy. So if you're a woman, so you can carry the baby. If you're a man, so you can father a child and be able to work and support your family. The family should be having these conversations about their potential choices of whether they're going to be parents someday. Plant that seed early so somebody from the outside can't come in and go and convince them they either don't need to be parents or it's bad to be parents, or like because of the climate or whatever, or that they can be parents no matter what they become. Just buy a baby, surrogate, make one in a test tube, be a man with a womb, whatever. That they need to understand that a woman's body was designed to carry babies as a woman's body completely, with breasts and the whole thing. And if you explain what the parts do for the baby as opposed to sex, then it connects them more to the beauty, the creative power of their bodies, the the ownership and cherishing of their bodies. And even as you get to 13, 14, now we're talking about kids in puberty, the processes they're going through that are uncomfortable and icky and it's all prelude to something amazing. But you're framing it that way. You're setting it up like it's going to be uncomfortable. And but you know what? It's like, and I would recommend that you do something like study metamorphosis with caterpillars around this time, because they're going through a metamorphosis. And we tend to think of the metamorphosis as, the caterpillar goes in its cocoon and it just like sleeps for a while and wakes up a butterfly. No, it is turning into a kind of, it's a very unpleasant process for the caterpillar, and then it emerges the butterfly. But what has to happen in between is really uncomfortable for it and unpleasant. Thank goodness it's kind of sleeping through it. It becomes almost like goo before it becomes what it becomes. And you can have conversations around how going from being a child to an adult as a human, able to be an adult and make adult decisions and reproduce the species, is not comfortable either for any animal. There's that maturation process. It's like you're trying to get used to yourself. It happens fast and there are lots of changes. When you explain that and you tell them like, yeah, it's not, if people might make it look easy on the internet or in a movie, it's not. It's really hard and it's supposed to be, and that's okay. But guess what? It's super temporary. And on the other side, you have this amazing ability to reproduce if you want to. But even if you don't, you have this amazing ability to be an adult. You'll have strong bones, you'll have a bigger brain, you're going to be able to make bigger decisions and go through stress that right now you can't even imagine. And that's what it's all about. Is that whole process is so important. You can have this conversation with preteens and early teens and should. And that way when somebody comes in, the puberty is optional and you don't need to go through that hell. Da, da, da. They'll be like, oh yeah, I do. That's how my bones are going to be strong. That's how my brain's going to form. So they'll know the truth and they'll be looking at these other people going, I feel sorry for you that you don't understand what's going on. But we're not teaching kids that way. We're teaching them all the different ways to have sex, say yes, say no, that they, sexually transmitted diseases, blah, 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 blah. We're not teaching them why puberty. It was like, yeah, to make babies, but then they'll like move right on to sex. You teach it in a way that inoculates them against the absolute wackadoodle anti-reality woo that they're teaching of transhumanism and transgenderism. So, there won't be the cognitive dissonance. What you're trying to do with this inoculation process is you're trying to reduce cognitive dissonance. What I mean by that is when your child is holding two sort of mutually exclusive ideas, the kind of ideas like I love animals, but I like meat, right? So if they're sitting there thinking, I am physically a girl, but I like trucks. And they don't understand that that's totally normal because someone's explicitly told them that. And somebody comes in and tells them it's abnormal and tells them that it means something else, then they're going to have this dissonance. How can I be a girl that likes trucks? That can't be true. To deal with the discomfort, they'll choose the easy answer that's given to them. Well, you're really a boy on the inside. Like they have some different candy center. And you get in there and you give them the truth about gender, about sex, early on, sex as in gender. And somebody comes and says it to them, and they're just going to look at that person like they have three heads, just like we adults do. So those of us who were properly inoculated, let's say those of us were over 50, we were taught, using reality. We didn't grow up in progressive households that were very relativistic. We had some kind of philosophy that was grounded in objective truth, reality, beauty, whatever. Could have been religious, could have been just objectivist or whatever, but, really solidly grounded and based in reality. We look at these gender people and we go, cuckoo. We don't have cognitive dissonance. When they say, you're being mean if you don't let them use the same bathroom, we're like, no, I'm not. It doesn't even take 2 seconds to decide that. They sound like the crazy members of a cult that they are. What you're trying to do is give your child an education that lands them in the same position. It's sad that they'll have to think those things about other people, but it's certainly better than going, well, I'm going to hold space for those ideas. We don't want that. All right, moving on to high school. And this is especially true for those students who have been in public school and you finally yank them out and now it's high school and they were taught this relativistic garbage, blah, blah, blah. You're going to have to tread lightly. So as I said at the outset, the sooner you start, the earlier you start, the more pleasant and easy and even fun and, whatever this inoculation process is going to be. And I'm still only stuck on gender, by the way. We're going to get into race too. But you get these kids who've been taught that, you're going to need help. And for that, I would suggest that you ask them questions about, the reality. Let's go back to the reproductive thing that I talked about, but you can get into much more detail because they're older. And just lead with questions, lots and lots of questions. Why do you think human beings evolved this way? And when it comes to it, gender is a social construct, whatever, say, okay, but that makes sense to me as far as what you like to wear and the people you like to hang out with and what kind of hobbies you like and so on. That makes sense to me. You want to be a certain kind of female or a certain kind of, male. But why do you think that changes biologically who you are? Why do you have this assumption that you like the things you like? Isn't that kind of limiting? And you can show examples from history, people like Amelia Earhart. You can show examples from even more recent history of, people who pushed the gender envelope, but were very much their sex. David Bowie, is another good example. I'm trying to think of Fran Lebowitz, the photographer. So you can go and find examples of very confident, very successful. So in other words, they weren't discriminated against in any way. People who we might have called gender bending or whatever from a social standpoint. And so like, what's wrong with just that? Why they didn't need to have surgery? They didn't live as the opposite sex literally. They didn't need to do it literally. And you can pose the question and expect an answer if there are so many different literal sexes, why is the surgery or why is the chemical change always binary from one to the other? How does that explain that? Can you explain that? They won't be able to. And if you don't want to be that sort of snarky or like controversial, just say like, what do you think about this though? Don't you think that's? I mean, how would you explain that if you needed to explain that? Right. Also, they're gonna probably come at you with, "Well, I don't wanna be mean, and why are you so hateful?" or something like that, or, "Do you wanna hate these people?" And you can say, "Absolutely not. I actually worry about these people because they could do what they want if what they want is to wear different clothes, change their name, um, be perceived as much more masculine than the so-called like typical female or more feminine than a typical male. They can do all that. They've been able to do that for a long, long time. That's why I said show with historical examples. From when I was a kid, totally okay. Not a problem. Nobody has a problem with that. No one did for the last 30 years, probably. And you can say, did you know that? Did you know that that's totally possible to do? You don't actually need to literally change. And you can kind of put them in a position where they need to articulate for themselves why literally changing is necessary. And if they say, well, they're so uncomfortable, then you can use analogies like anorexia and so forth and say, okay, well, what other kind of a sickness or illness that makes people that uncomfortable do we say, well, they're so uncomfortable, we have to let them do the thing that makes them immediately less comfortable? And if they say, what do you mean? You'd be like, okay, well, people drink and use drugs to excess because they're so uncomfortable living in real life without being high, without being drunk. It is intensely uncomfortable for them. Should we just affirm, let them drink, let them use drugs, like even till it kills them? And then they'll say, well, this transition isn't going to kill them. And you say, well, it kills the person they were. They weren't born that way. So it does kill that person. They become somebody different. And it's not a person who can have children. It's not a person who can go backwards if they change their mind. It's a completely different version of themselves that is permanently different. So if they make a mistake, because, they're kids, they can't change it. They can't. It's stuck. You can even at the age of high school start talking about detransitioners and show them detransitioner stories. This is how you would deal with the dissonance. You just have to approach it with curiosity and dialogue and asking them to explain themselves to you and try really hard to leave the judgment out of it. The older they get, the more important it is to leave that at the door. And if the conversation gets heated, just stop and just back away and say, all right, I just want to make sure we're clear that I love you no matter what, but in this household, you need to be 18 before you can make those kinds of changes to yourself. That's just, it doesn't mean I don't love you. Doesn't mean you can't live here. Doesn't mean you can't, like let's say they go so far to saying, I want to be a man. I want to be like, I'm not going to tell you what you have to call yourself, etc. But I won't be calling you by that name because you're my child. And to me, this is the name I gave you for good reasons. So I'll be calling you by this name. I'm not going to use made up pronouns because I speak English. That won't hurt you. You're going to be okay. Be sarcastic, but you'll be all right. And you can't use any kind of drugs or et cetera. And if I find out that you're doing that, either you're getting drugs somehow through the mail or whatever, then we're going to have to talk about next steps and what we do after that. But we need to trust each other here. And it's my job to take care of you and to make sure that you're healthy and safe. And if you genuinely feel that confused, then we need to find you the proper kind of help to be less confused and so on. But again, I'm talking about a homeschool kid that's like newly homeschooled in high school and you pulled them out because somebody was socially transitioning them or something. I think if your kid is just homeschooled high school and they've been homeschooled, but you're not going to have any of these conversations because you will have had the others, hopefully. And even if you haven't, they probably already think a little differently. So it shouldn't be that big a problem. It's much more of a problem if they're consuming outside media, outside information, and people are telling them in order to be a good person and to be my friend, you have to accept this, accept that, and so on. And you can tell them, the older they get, if you want to indulge other people in their fantasies and their delusions, I can't stop you. I can't monitor everything that you're doing, but let me recommend against that. And here's why. And then you can explain to them why you're not doing it, why you won't do it, why you don't think they should do it if they truly care about their friend. And say, like, is it nice to actually tell a person with anorexia that yeah, you're fat, so they keep starving themselves? Well, it's kind of the same thing. When you affirm a delusion, you're lying to somebody, and when they need someone to be honest and forthright. And that can be done in a loving way. So you also teaching them to push back against the cognitive distortion of us versus them. There's only a right and a wrong, in every single situation. And sometimes there's right, and there's right and wrong ways to express what's right. And there's wrong, and there's right and wrong ways to express what's wrong. So that's the important thing. All right, now moving on to the racism stuff and the woke racism. I'd like to believe this one's a little easier because it seems to be more obvious, but this is where getting out and about is so important. This is where being out of your home and existing in the world, touch grass, all that, going to stores, going to different places, and just having your children experience in real life that racism isn't what they're saying it is. So if friends come along or the internet or movies try to depict things as being so awful, they're going to be able to be like, wait, that doesn't align with what I've seen in reality. The other thing is in your history education or in your homeschool education, you're going to again explicitly deal with it. Pull materials about the past. How go ahead and hit it head on. There was this thing called racism, and it was really bad. And here's how we dealt with it, and here's what people did, and here are play up how the races worked together, how white and black people came together in the civil rights movement, play up the abolitionists who were white, play up all of the collaboration across these differences, really hone in on it and spend time on it. You don't have to explicitly go, see, they're not racist. It's just when you show it to kids early and often, then if somebody comes along and tries to say it's always been this way and white people and black people are like they're always separate, and they're going to have so many examples in their mind going, wait a minute, that's just not true. That's not true. And I can give you an example from my own eldest daughter who was homeschooled very early, then had to go to school and then came back out of school. But in the early years, very early years, like before third grade, we were talking about civil rights movement, Martin Luther King. I think on Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, whatever, we did something. And we talked about the civil rights movement. We actually took a trip to Selma and we went and saw the bridge, and we had all these conversations. We looked at little films and we saw the white and the black people who were together doing this. So when she went to school and she learned about, we also talked about Frederick Douglass, when people were trying to put off on her that white people have always been racist since systemic or blah, 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 blah. There she was, even as young as third grade, going, that's not true. No, there were these people and these people and these people. And like she was able to defend against that. And it's not about, don't enter into any of this thinking that your child has any obligation to change other people's minds, and make sure you tell them that too, by the way, or that they should argue in every battle. The most important argument that you want them to have is with themselves. It could be completely silent. The idea is you don't want them to encounter bad ideas and have nothing inside of themselves. No, they don't have an immunity buildup. That's the goal of this. So that's why I called it inoculation, because it's not about them changing their minds. In my daughter's head, she's very shy, she wasn't saying this to other people. She was just saying, and she would come home and talk to me. Same with my middle daughter. When she got in the car one day from public school and said, Mom, my teacher told me we shouldn't see these characters as individuals. That's crazy. That doesn't make sense to me. Well, why would she say that? She said that because I'd spent, since she was knee high to a grasshopper, talking about how important it is to see other people as individuals. So I was fighting racism making sure my kids saw other people as individuals from the time they were able to walk and talk and encounter other people. And by the time someone tried to pass off this faux notion of wokeism of that white people are all racist and black people are all oppressed, my kids were like, that's a tough sell. You're going to have a hard time selling me that garbage. That's inoculation. And the same holds true for climate. The same holds true for everything. Yes, you are going to have to teach these ideas just inverted. So whatever it is they're out there trying to pass off as true, and that you might have thought, well, this is self-evident common sense. Why should I have to teach that the earth is round? Because someone is out there teaching that it's flat. That's why. That's why we can no longer, as parents, set it and forget it and assume that our kids just walking around the earth, encountering other humans, taking classes, watching movies, etc., are going to, and through our siloed lessons in math and science, whatever, are going to arrive at the logical conclusion that men are men and women are women, and that this and that and the other. No, they may not. Even through our best efforts, unless we explicitly tackle things like I said, the reality of gender, the reality of race, which is that it's a lie, and the reality of history, which is that it goes like this. It doesn't just go like this, where we're kind of stuck down here right now until the progressives get their way. You're going to have to teach about communism. You're going to have to teach about that's goes without saying, but you're going to teach about it in such a way as to compare and contrast it with what people are trying to do today. You are. It's not enough to just shield them and protect them from that garbage and go on your merry way with classical stuff. You're going to have to show them what other people are saying. The older they get, the more you're going to frame it as some people say X, or you may hear Y, and this is why it's wrong. This is why it's incorrect. The younger they are, the more you're just going to teach them reality. And you have no choice. You just have no choice, because this is epidemic. And when there's an epidemic and there is the potential for inoculation against infection, that's what we have to do. Even those of us who don't like the actual real life inoculations, even I gave the polio shot to my kids. So, your mileage may vary on that one, but I think when it comes to bad ideas like these that are running so rampant that absolutely rot the brain and are destroying civilization, you have an obligation to inoculate your kids against them by teaching them a little bit in the inverse. So that's what I have to say about that. Just take what I said about the gender, apply it to the other ideas, the race, the history, the economics, whatever they're teaching, teach the opposite explicitly, juxtapose it against the bad idea, and explain why what you're showing is right and what they're doing is wrong. But the older they get, it's less tell and more ask. It's more Socratic. Involve them in it. Have them arrive at these conclusions. The good news is the facts are on your side. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this and found it useful, and I will see you on Friday with another topic. Have a great day.